This is the theme of Setback and Misery. Annie calls Paul a crybaby. Select frames. And then we're back in the room with Annie. So, in the same way that Paul is trapped in his room, we are back in his room. But the director gives us opportunities to leave the room through the camera. So we get some kind of relief. If all we did was live in this room, we would be anxious too. So she sees him on the floor, right? And she picks him up, and while she is picking him up, he's sort of complaining about the pain, and she calls him a crybaby. And then she makes an interesting point that he should be in a proper hospital bed, and that this would have never happened had he been in a proper hospital bed. Now she's speaking to her own lack of mastery orientation. That bed that she has is not a sufficient bed for a patient who is in need of severe medical services. But she continues to push against her own understanding of things, her own mastery orientation, and she's just going to create this world, however way she's going to create this world. Just make it up as she goes along, right? She knows that she's not a doctor. She knows that she doesn't really have all of the proper gear. She knows that even though she did a great job on his legs, that it's still not sufficient enough for him to get better, that this whole environment is still not sufficient enough for him to get better, to fully recover. So he looks up at her, of course. He has no words other than the words that, she's saying in the moment. And then he's lying on the floor. And this is where she was saying that if she had had a proper hospital bed, that this would never have happened, even though she doesn't know that he was actually trying to escape. So she's not privy to his attempts to escape. Right? There were maybe like a couple of more attempts of him being able to escape. It isn't until when he ventures out of his room and his foot or his wheelchair hits a coffee table that holds little penguin figurines, and it almost falls, and then he puts it back on the table, but he doesn't turn it in the right direction, that she gets a clue that he's been leaving his room, because she wouldn't have done it that way. Her whole house has each place has its own perspective, own attitude, own logic. All of the little penguin figurines are facing north. That means they do not have the option of doing anything other than what she tells them to do. Her sort of shrine to Paul Sheldon, all the books and his picture, they are serving a purpose on that little, I guess that's a little desk shelf, right? And they are in a certain order. They are very neatly shelved, and no one is to touch them, right? Her medical closet, medical little, closet, all of the pills are lined up, all of the other types of medications are lined up. The kitchen, although it looks a little busy, as well as the house, is still lined up. Even when Buster comes to visit her at the house and he ends up venturing upstairs, that bedroom that's upstairs is neatly cleaned, is the bed is made, the room is clean, right? And so every area in her house has a purpose to it. Even if it looks like it's cluttered, it's organized clutter. And so when she says that this would never have happened if you were in a hospital bed, she's talking from a place of being out of order. She's doing things out of order, which is contrary to the way her house is ordered or organized or structured. So she's trying to help him into the bed. Of course, it's going to be a strain because it's hard to hold up a body, but we know that she's capable of doing this because after all, he did crash, and she did pick him up and hoist him over her shoulder and walk, for miles um, back to her house. So we know that she's capable of doing this, and we don't know how many times she's done this. There must be some kind of ease with it. She must have done this before, because to be able to hold a man, not drag him, is something else. So then she's kind of frustrated with his complaining. Remember, when he had crashed, he couldn't talk. She had to resuscitate him, and so he was basically, I guess, kind of unconscious but not dead. So he didn't have any complaints about her holding him. Now that he's in this position and on the floor and she's trying to hold him and get him up, he's complaining. So he's basically telling her to hold up, right? And she's calling him a crybaby, and that it's not as serious as he's trying to make it out to be, but he's the one who's actually in pain. He's the one who's in pain. So how is it that it's not as serious? So this is again an example of people not taking his pain or his misery seriously. In some ways, Annie picking up Paul in this way with such strain, right? Because it didn't seem like she was feeling the strain of picking him up in a blizzard. And here it is. This is normalcy right here in terms of the fact that it's in the house. It's not outside in the blizzard. That in some ways, this is Annie. It's almost like a foreshadowing of Annie picking him back up from his fall from grace, if he had let misery completely die, in a sense that had his car not gone off the road and he returned to New York and he let it die completely and moved on to something else, and then his fan base died, then his reputation would die along with it. Now that's far-fetched, right? We are conducting a critical analysis, so we do have a little bit of creative license, but the picking him up in this way and straining is such a contrast to what she was doing when she was picking him up in the blizzard. But we don't see that process in the blizzard, though. We get an image of her resuscitating him, then another image of her putting the leather briefcase into her coat for protection, and then the last two images of him already on her shoulders. So we never got how much of a strain it was to pick him up. That during the recovery process, there are times that you would have to pick your own self up. And that it is such a strain to pick yourself up from the bottom, that it takes so much time. That's why I wanted to focus on each sort of step-by-step way in which Annie is picking up Paul. And so this is where he feels the pain of her helping him, and he's basically telling her wait, and but she continues and calls him a crybaby. And again, you're going to be a crybaby when you are in this kind of pain. The pain is still visible. It's not like you don't see the visible nature of his pain and then you say, okay, it's just all in his head. No, it can't be all in his head when his face is still badly bruised. His arm is still in a holding, I forget, a sling, and his legs and feet are still swollen. So how can you say that? How can you call him a crybaby? In the same way that I feel that the agent is kind of doing the same thing without actually calling Paul Sheldon a crybaby. He has no visible scars when he is discussing his professional work and how he didn't intend on making misery his life. But because he doesn't have any visible scars, he's not really taken as seriously as he should by his agent. He's crying out for something else, but she doesn't hear him. In this instance, he's crying out for something else, and Annie doesn't hear him, even though she is the one who is in the process of helping him to recover. She heard his bones move about in his legs. So how is it that she doesn't understand this cry that he is sort of crying out right now through this particular process? And so she manages to get him in the bed, straighten him up. It's still a task, of course. All right, like, subscribe, and visit. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more discussions. You can visit my YouTube channel for further film analysis. It's Favorites Film Analysis as the title of the channel. You can always send me an email and ask me a question, reginayfavorites@yahoo.com. My Overcoming Setback 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction book will become available around October 2021. I'm still doing some editing. The book does not focus on film analyses, but I use the content that I created for the book to support my my perceptions of setback used as a theme in select films. So when the book becomes available, I will send out a notification video, audio. Thank you very much for visiting the channel.